before we get into coding, let's take a look at this app structure I made. So first, we're going to create a custom hook that's going to contain our global state as well as actions to manipulate that global state. We're going to also make a separate component just for creating a context. We're going to import both of these guys into our most top level component. So in this case, it's going to be index. Inside of that index, we're going to wrap the whole app with context provider, and we'll give a value of global state to that provider. So any children of index will have access to that global state by using use context hook. So our form component that's nested will import the context, use context hook, and we'll be able to have access to this global state as well as all the actions to it. Same thing goes for list. List will import it and we'll be able to display the list that we're creating in our form. So I just made a new Create React app, and let's take a look at our structure. So first thing we'll do is create this store folder that's going to contain a custom hook, the global state, as well as the one-liner to create a context and export it. All right, so first thing is we're going to create a folder called store. Inside of that store, we're going to create another two files. One, use global state JS, and this is the naming convention for hooks. It starts with use, so I'll just keep up with that. And then the context, I'll just call it context.js. And for the global store, we're gonna import useState hook from React. And we don't have to import React because we're not gonna be exporting a JSX. So for us, this is enough. I'm gonna create use global store equals, and here we're gonna destructure the use state into state set state from use state hook. And here we're gonna hard code our state. So it's just gonna contain value, empty string by default, and a list, which is an empty array by default. We don't have to hard code it. We could make it initial value to something that we can pass within props, but for now we're just gonna do that. Inside of here, we're also gonna create a switch block to kind of mock how Redux handles the actions and action types and payloads. And we're gonna call it actions. Pass an action, and then we're gonna destructure the type and action and payload. I'm sorry. From action. Here we're gonna create a switch block. Oh, I'm sorry, before I forget. Switch block, we're gonna pass type here. Case set state. We're gonna do return set state and payload. So I think that's the only action we're gonna do, and then we can create a default where we're just gonna return state just in case something is passed that we don't expect. Okay, I think we're good here. So now we can return an object that will contain our state and actions. And export default. Use global state. Actually, let me change this to state, not store. State. I think this is better. Now for context, it's very simple. We're just gonna, once again, the structure create context from React const context. I'm making this capitalized because I'll be using it in JSX. Create context. I'll just pass an empty object because we'll be overriding this value anyways with our global store. Support default context. All right, so these two guys are done. Now, if we look at our structure, we just created these guys. We gotta import those in index and wrap everything inside of index. So the next step is to import these two guys. Import use global state from store global state. Also import the context from store context. All right, so now let's create a new dummy component that we can wrap these guys with. Call it index. And I'm going to return something. Before that, I'm going to destructure our, well, we can just say store. Const store is equals use global state, like that. So now we have a reference to that state and sets and actions methods. So return. Okay, so we're gonna where is it? Context. Okay, so we're gonna take context.provider, pass a value to it, which is gonna be store. And we're gonna close this guy. And wrap app. And we're gonna just replace this app with our index. And if we didn't screw anything up, now of course we did. Turn state unexpected token 222. Okay, let's take a look at the. Okay, that's default needs this guy, right? All right, so here you go. Nothing changed. Everything looks fine. But now, anything inside of this app is going to have access to our global store. All right, so we're done with the global state and context things. Let's take a look at our structure. So this is done and wired up at our index. The next part would be just to create these two components that gonna live inside of an app, and we're not gonna pass any props to them. We're just gonna directly grab that global state using use context hooks. So let's create a components folder. Inside of a components folder, we're just gonna create a list.js file as well as form.js. We're just gonna look at the values first. That'd be simpler way just to show that we have access to that global state. So we're gonna import React, use context so that we can grab that global state from context. We also need to import that context, and it's from upper level store context. create const, we'll call it list, which equals, and we're gonna destructure our state, and well, in this case we're just gonna do state. We don't really need the set state because we're just gonna display values, so we're not gonna manipulate these values for now at least. And we're gonna use context. We're gonna pass that context. So this context basically gives us a reference to the store we're wiring up at the index level. Okay, so now we can return a JSX. Let's just do that. Let's make a fragment inside of that. Inside of this, we're just gonna make, for instance, an H3. It's gonna display state dot value, and this is just to see, make sure that we actually have the access to that global state. I'm gonna export default list. Now if we go to our app.js, this is all default markup from React Create React App. We're just gonna remove these guys. I missed something. I think this p tag. Alright, so we have this, and let's import our list from components list. We're gonna just do this. So we don't see anything because currently there's nothing in the value. So right now, let's see, let's make something global state value. There you go. So now our list guy has access to that global state, even though we're not passing any props from above, which is awesome. I think this is amazing. All right, so now since this is working, we can, for a time being, switch to the form so that we can actually dynamically add values to that global state. Import React, use context from React. I guess that's what we're using. Also, we need to import, once again, the context. So any component that would want to use this global state would have to import this context from a store folder. What am I doing? Okay, from upper level store context. Now we can create const form equals, and we can destructure. I guess we'll take both. Oh no, we've still got it. Yes. We're gonna take state as well as actions. All right, is that what we're exporting? Actions, yep. So we also have actions, use context. Now we can return something such as a form, submit form. Inside of that form, we're just gonna put an input. We're gonna tie its value to the state dot value, and on change, we're gonna manipulate that value. So every time we every keystroke, we're gonna be setting a new value, which will be a good exercise to see if this actually works. And we're gonna take actions. We're gonna pass an object, which is gonna be a type, which I believe is use state. set state. Yep. Set state, and then payload is going to be the whole object. So it's no longer like set state in class-based components. We actually have to make a copy of the whole existing state before setting something, but it's relatively easy to do with a spread operator. So we can just do state, and we can say value so that we don't override the list. We can say value is equals to e dot target dot value. I believe that's correct. State value, yes, I think that's right. So now, let's see if I screwed anything up. We still gotta export it. So we can export default form. Well, we still don't have anything to handle the submit on this, but we can take care of that. Let's import this guy. Let's call it form. Let's see if I broke anything. So far none. And let's do this. All right. So as you can see, that value appears here, and as I'm typing, we're changing that value. And as we're changing that value, it's updating in the both siblings. So we're not really have to do like a reference that the parent needs to update the state and pass it to the other sibling. So this is directly using the global state. So as we type, we go. And I think this is a good example. I was planning to do a to-do list where we can push values from this value here. So I was planning to just, as you hit enter, just push these values to the array that we have here. But I think this shows enough that this does work, and you have access to the global state from your components inside of that index that we wrapped with context provider.